The broadcast is now
Start the
starting. All
broadcast.
attendees are in listen-only mode.
All right, we're gearing up to get ready to roll. You still there,
Yeah,
Craig?
yeah, absolutely. Let's go ahead and do it.
Awesome. Just want to make you can see my screen. Everything looks good, right?
It looks great.
Awesome. Perfect. All right. Well, we got folks that'll trickle in, I'm certain, as we get rolling. But I appreciate you all being here. Thanks for joining us. Real quick, I'm Dave Lowe. I'm the Director of Government Solutions, and with me I have Craig Miller. He's the VP of Business Development. Say hey, Craig.
Hey, Craig.
Awesome. We really appreciate you guys being here and joining us today. We have folks from all over the place, from GSA, VA, USAID, all the way around the country, and many folks with many different issues. So we appreciate you guys joining us. At some of the folks that are here. And just a quick disclaimer: this event is not affiliated or endorsed by any agency, is not provided to the audience, and is provided to the audience for informational purposes only. All participation in this briefing is voluntary, and any engagement by government personnel like you is not an indication of endorsement of or commitment to purchase from any vendor, including us. So now that we got that out of the way, we can actually do some dialogue. As far as introductions are concerned, we did that a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about why we're here, some of the initiatives that are coming down on your head, and why it's important to know some of these things. Legacy modernization options, especially as it deals with mainframe systems, and looking at specifically some of the benefits of automated factoring. We'll talk about some Q&A, talk about some gotchas that'll keep you out of the hot water as you do these things, and funding your agency modernization using some of the things that are happening on a grander scale within the government, and some action items for all of us to be able to follow up on as we can help each other do these things. I'm going to let Craig go and give you a dose about what InnoWake is and why we are here, and the types of things that we do. Go ahead, Craig.
Yeah, so InnoWake has been around since about 1999. We actually are a global company, and our sweet spot is legacy modernization. We employ over 80 people globally. Our U.S. headquarters are in Austin, Texas. What we think is really awesome about InnoWake is that so far through 15 years, we have a 100% success rate with large enterprise scale modernization projects. We don't know of anybody else that has that sort of success rate. And what's even better is that we obviously have the references to back that up. Because of our successes and the unique way that we do, the unique low risk way that we do modernization, we've become the exclusive modernization partner for Deloitte Consulting. And we are experts in .NET, Java, Natural, and COBOL. So on the modern side, and obviously on the legacy side.
Super. So real quick, I'm going to pop open a poll. If I can get my hands on this 1 second, pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. And let's figure out why folks are here, and we'll get an idea of what we can do for you. So you're here because you want to know more about legacy modernization. Just renewed your legacy license. We know what the pain points are there. And have you had a modernization fail? That's one of the places that oftentimes we're called in. And having problems with the current migration, which is some of the places that we operate as well. And maybe you just have one that needs to be modernized, and we can take a look at that for you, and talk about that specifically. So let us know why you're here, and we'll make sure that we incorporate that into our session. And we're coming up on 45 seconds, so I'm gonna give you 10 more seconds, and then we're gonna let you go from this particular poll. And 3, 2, 1, and out of here. Awesome. So now you should be able to see my screen again, right? Right, Craig?
Yeah, we're good.
All right, super. Fantastic. So some of the federal initiatives that are coming down on your head. Back in 2009, GAO released 09566, which dealt with strengthening the investment board oversight. And this played a direct role into the presidential memorandum for improving energy efficiency, Executive Order 13589. A lot of us know about that one from November of 2011, promoting efficient spending. And then again, M1212, which is reducing the footprint and getting to the place where we're strengthening the federal IT portfolio management with M1309. Now, all of these federal initiatives tie into how we handle our legacy systems, right? Because some of these things that have been left around for many, many years, decades, in fact, and as we talk with different agencies and work with the CIO Council on these things, these are the types of things that we find. And real quick, let's talk about what modernization is. Craig, give us a dose on what legacy modernization is and some of the things that we're going to talk about for improving that.
So what I think is very important for everybody to understand is that legacy systems, there can be multiple meanings for that. What we mean by that at Inawake is that it's going to be a mainframe that is supporting your existing systems. Typically on that mainframe, there's going to be COBOL, Natural, Database, vSAM, DB2. We've also seen a lot of PL1. We've seen Fortran. Well, we always come across Assembler. So it's those applications that typically support your agency running on either an individual mainframe, or in many instances, we notice that they are on shared mainframes, and we can handle both of those. One of the issues with legacy systems, and we'll go into some of those a little bit later, but they're certainly very costly, and the ongoing maintenance is certainly can be prohibitive. What's awesome about them, though, and I'll talk about the other side real quick, is that they're bulletproof. They're absolutely bulletproof. But when I think what most agencies see, Dave, is that when you're weighing the goods and the bads with legacy systems, the inability to quickly react to the changing agency regulations, federal regulations on a state basis, some of the things that are coming down the pipe, they need to be able to react quickly. And in a legacy system, it's virtually impossible to react quickly. And then there may be an actual functional roadblock that is just not available in that particular system. So that's why we're seeing a lot more agencies, commercial, state governments that are looking to upgrade. So modernizing to a new platform, what we mean by that is that we want to have a standard server environment that's either going to be virtual server, physical server, a cloud environment. We obviously want to be able to do the full modernization effort of migrating the data from the legacy database over to something like SQL or Oracle. We even have some customers that wanted to maintain their DB2, but put everything else on the more modern platforms, and we're able to handle that also.
So between those, we're talking about what the legacy systems are, and most of that, like you said, Craig, is in the mainframe world. And what are some of the issues that we find out there looking at these legacy systems? You mentioned earlier the licensing and maintenance costs. This is probably one of the highest pain points, and it only pops up once every 5 years or so when we got to stroke the check for those licenses, right?
Yeah, and if you think about it, these are the costs simply to keep the lights on. You know, the benefits behind these costs are very hard to find if they're even there. So the licensing and maintenance costs are typically very high, and they're just to keep the lights on. This is a big deal. In legacy systems, it's the IT team, which is the primary source of the system knowledge. Those are the experts as to what's going on. They're very typically not well documented as far as what's happening on a business rule or business rules inside of a system. So it's the actual programmers which hold that knowledge. There's a major risk point right there, is because what happens when they retire, they leave for whatever reason, and they have that knowledge.
They're not
business rule extract. Yeah,
you're not graduating folks from college with COBOL experience anymore, right?
No, you're not. And good luck finding anyone that has real good ability that is not, on the verge of retirement. So your long-term ability is greatly reduced, obviously.
In fact, for our folks here from the VA, I got to spend some time with Bob McDonald a couple weeks ago, and we talked about this and the fact that the green screen situation, the fact that this is a technology that we're fundamentally kind of tied to and can't get away from in the VA especially, and moving our processes away from that green screen. He talked about that actually at the session at the NVSBE show and at the keynote. So it was great. It was great to hear him talking about that after we had talked about it. It was awesome. So let's talk about the mission and being able to access this even in its current state. If we get it into the new platform, we have the ability to do some things that we can't do right now, right?
Absolutely. As soon as one of the very quick wins that we're able to provide our clients is the ability to, within 3 months to 6 months of starting a project like this, to expose your data to some of the analytics tools that are out there, to the business intelligence tools that are out there. And that's a great way of showing the higher ups that, listen, we're already starting to see some progress with what it is that we're doing. And then, Dave, here's the other one that you just brought up with data analytics, is that they're currently legacy systems without some pretty advanced third-party software, which then locks you even deeper into the vendor. It's difficult to produce online services with that, with the legacy applications, and of course any of the going mobile is also extremely difficult.
Yeah, it's almost impossible for running from there.
Almost impossible.
Almost impossible. So as we look at some of those things, a lot of times it's best to take a look at what we're trying to accomplish by modernization, and some of that has to do with just specific components of when you're actually doing the migration process, right? Because some of this, you know what you want to pull it into the new platform, so you can get into the mobile apps and things like that. So let's talk about, as we do this, the things that we want to make sure don't happen while we're doing this transition.
Right. So as obviously new federal regulations are coming down the pipe, those have to be adhered to. Many of those are going to have some sort of system component that's going to have to be modified or customized in order to meet those requirements during the modernization project. And we won't get into the details. We're not going to get into necessarily any propeller head talk here, but there is no code freeze, which means there's no disruption to the mission. As we're going through this modernization process, your programmers, your developers, your system experts are still doing their job as is, creating code, implementing new systems, deploying, testing, and it has no interruption with what it is that we're doing, and better off, there's no disruption to what your agency's current mission is. We integrate with the existing source code management, so you're not having to go out and buying, let's say Microsoft Team Foundation server if that's what you're using. We're able to integrate very tightly into the typical lifecycle management applications that are currently out there. Here's one of what we feel is a big delineator from what we do to any of our quasi competitors, is that in the end result of the modernization, and we'll get into this a little bit more in a little bit, the code is highly recognizable by your existing legacy application developers once we go through some training, and it's also very maintainable code. So keep that in the back of your mind. There is no impact on the end users because we do a one-for-one. Initially, we do a one-for-one functionality migration. The users basically come back and say, you know what, we didn't notice any difference here. What did we modernize? Because we do a two-step modernization process. The first step is to bring over the system onto the new platform as it is. The second step is then modernize and let's put in new functionality. So the impact on the users during phase one is minimal, if any at all, and that we see that as a huge positive. And of course, we are 508 and 88 compliant.
And this is critical. I was talking to some folks with the VA about this, and Craig and I, you and I have met with some folks there too, and this is an important initiative from Laverne Council, driven down through everybody, that especially for the folks with the VA, but in other areas of the government as well, where the green screen obviously creates a tremendous problem in being able to facilitate that at all. Because it is not 508 compliant at all. So that's one of the places there too. So let's talk about controlling some of those costs too.
Oh, absolutely. So obviously on a modern platform, your costs are going to be significantly less than the licensing and the maintenance that you're paying for on the legacy systems. You're also now on a better foundation to enhance the system with all of the available tools that are out there, whether they are, there's some wonderful freeware, shareware tools available. Open source now becomes available to you. And again, you're not locked into one vendor as you typically are in the legacy environment, thereby giving you the ability to reallocate some of the money that was being spent on the legacy systems into things that better support your mission. So here's the really what I would call the meat and the potatoes of what we're trying to do here. How InnoWake modernizes. We do this in two very distinct phases. We broke them up into these phases because this is the way that we're able to reduce the huge risk of some of the other methods of modernization. So phase one is that we will migrate your entire systems off of the mainframe. We will introduce a new development environment, and we will train your existing developers. That doesn't mean that they're all going to stay. Okay, so our experience is that there is absolutely some attrition. Some COBOL programmers do not want to learn anything about Java or .NET, same thing on the natural side possibly. But the ability is there and the code is highly recognizable. So we go ahead and introduce the modern development environment to your legacy developers, allowing them to sort of come along for the ride. We then will migrate your code to .NET or Java on the new platform via 100% automated tooling. And here's what I mean by that, is that our system is going to, we'll call it the meat grinder, is going to take your system, and we are going to send it through this meat grinder, and on the other side, all your COBOL code will come out into either .NET or Java. Your assembler will come out in .NET or Java, your natural, or what have you on the mainframe side. This tooling is what is our system. On the very first run of taking everything and migrating it over, and by the way, because we're not using programmers that are doing this one at a time and it's completely automatic, we can do millions of lines of code a second, okay? So let that digest a little bit. So we've had some of our competitors say that, listen, we can do 1,000 lines of code every night. That's not even an issue with us, obviously, with our tooling the way it is. But what we want to do, the very first run, we're going to come through and say, we recognize 99% of the code. We don't go back and then ask you to change your code to make it 100% automated. We go back and change the tooling. We recognize those areas that we have fallen short in. We modify the tool, and we keep doing that process until it is 100% automated. That is why we are able to do no code freeze and no disruption to your mission. As the programmers are still developing in their natural or COBOL, we're on it could be a nightly basis, a weekly basis, a monthly basis. It doesn't matter to us. We put it on a schedule that all new code that has gone through the typical testing will then get pumped through the meat grinder and be available on the modern platform. We'll go into some parallel processing in a little bit, but that's the key of 100% automated tools to do this, is that it does not disrupt your mission. The code is very high quality code on the other side, highly recognizable and completely maintainable. You're no longer locked into one vendor, not us. We don't want to be that guy. We also then, of course, we migrate your data over to typically Oracle or Microsoft SQL in some instances, and we migrate your batch and JCL to the new platform. Inside of our tooling, we have batch interpreters, so we have multiple ways of being able to handle that. Keep in mind, that is step one. Step two, once we have you on the new platform with the exact same functionality that you have on your old system, we guarantee it works exactly the same way. We go through recorded testing, regression testing, the whole 9 yards. It's your typical process. And then we can deploy it iteratively in small little chunks. But once, after, let's say, a year to a year and a half, the re-platformed, if we will, system is up and running. Now we start talking about, what do we need to do to modernize this? From a business rules aspect, what else needs to be put into this? But because now we're putting it into the new system, not necessarily the old system, giving you the availability of all of what's out there for modern technology. We typically the very first modernization that we're asked to do is to modernize the UI, although it now is either running in Java, in Java or .NET. It's a web application. It still looks very green screen like, right? But we do that on purpose. So the next step would be, now let's take that and actually use some of the web services that are available and really make the UI modernized. So typically that alone speeds up processing, and that's why it's usually the first step that our customers ask us to do.
So piggybacking on that for just 1 second, it's going to be presented exactly like you have it, right? And then after it's there and working, and you know that all the systems are one for one, you dismiss the rest of the mainframe stuff, then you can, at that point, you can do your management team and all the people that have been looking to get something else out of the data can create their wish list and create the changes that are necessary. So you start with exactly what you have, new platform, then you can start making your changes. So then you're not impacting your your mission and what that system is doing today, right?
That's exactly what it is. What we know and what Gardner has even published out there is the biggest reason why modernization efforts fail is because you're trying to take too big of a bite out of the apple. The way we do it, by getting you onto the new platform first with absolutely no enhancements and then modernizing from there, we're taking smaller chunks out of that apple. And then you can also then start deploying enhancements or creating enhancements in small little iterative chunks, again, so that we're not creating a big bang deployment of anything. That's what our tooling allows you to do, and that's the methodology that we came up with that has been extremely successful for us and has granted us interest from companies like Deloitte and obviously now into the federal realm. So that's right. Exactly our model. That's exactly our model.
And that's perfect, because let's talk about what we see now. There's 4 fundamental options that are out there that are being presented from different areas about and how they can make this modernization change. The first is a rewrite, where tell us how that usually works, and this is where a lot of folks fail too, right?
Yeah, obviously with a rewrite, especially when the system is not very well documented, we find that the failure occurs because of a couple of different reasons. Number one, you're trying to rewrite everything from scratch. The time it takes to do that is incredible. There are always costly overruns on trying to rewrite a system. There are going to be business processes that are going to be missed. And then there's also going to be new bugs that are going to be introduced that have to be worked out in order for deployment to actually work. Not to mention that's going to also be a big bang deployment every time. We are called in many times for agencies and state agencies where rewrites have failed. We actually sort of look for the failures in the news, and then we come in and let them know there's a better way of doing this.
After they've already spent a couple million or tens of millions of dollars with the attempt.
Hundreds of millions we've seen. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. So the other thing that we hear nowadays is commercial off-the-shelf stuff, so that you can take, it's the 80-20 rule, where 80% of it is working, and now you're just going to change the 20% to make your move to the new platform. What are some of the issues with that?
Well, so let's talk about the positives of that. If your business model, if the way that you run your agency fits very well, again, like they said, into an 80-20 rule, then we'll be the first company to tell you that COTS is something that you would probably want to take a look at. The problem with COTS are you are then again locked into the vendor, right? It's something we're trying to avoid, and there's a lot of issues with that, as I think we've already seen. Sometimes there are very minimal enhancements that can be made, and sometimes you need the agency to be more agile. And if the software doesn't have that same agility, you're almost back into the same issue that you had with legacy systems. And then I think the biggest one that is, I think, maybe it's surprising to you, I guess it wasn't to me because I used to be in the ERP world. COTS implementations fail over 30% of the time. So if you're the one making the decision on that, I'm not sure I would want to stick my head out there for $110 million when there is a 33% chance that it's not going to work. Again, big bang deployment has a lot to do with that, we found in our experience. So
true enough. So the other one we see is lift and shift. Tell us what that is.
Yeah, so this is one that started gaining some momentum a couple of years back. Lift and shift means this. Let's say you're running a COBOL system in your legacy application, but you want to put that on a modern platform. There are the vendors out there that will literally take that exact COBOL system and place it as a COBOL system, but now running on Linux or Windows or what have you. Typically, it's that same vendor that is, for example, Micro Focus COBOL is one of them. So where is the advantage of still being locked into the COBOL programmers? Where's the advantage of still being locked into what's available to the COBOL technical environment, or same thing with natural and database? We find it even more so that there's almost no advantage to doing so, except for you eliminate the mainframe, but you have not eliminated the pitfalls of the technology that you're currently running on. So lift and shift, what does it really get you? That's always been my question.
So where we are now is looking at automated factoring, which is kind of what we've been leading into the whole way, is to say there's an option to be able to use this meat grinder technology thing that Craig's been talking about, to be able to get us to a place where we can take what's existing and port it to a new place without any disruption to your internal workings and your functionality. And that's what we're going to be talking about from here on out, right, Craig?
That's correct.
Awesome. So let's talk about that. Tell us what it is. Tell us, because a lot of folks don't even know the word refactoring or what it means.
Right. Well, refactoring, actually, I've heard it in different ways from different people. What we primarily mean by refactoring is that we are taking your current code and we are going to migrate it functionality for functionality, exactly the same, over to a Java or .NET platform, which obviously is typically going to be either a Linux or a Microsoft platform. The 100% automated refactoring, again, is where we come in that nobody else is able to do this. Our tools do this. 100% of your code will be automatically refactored over to the new platform. No disruption, no downtime, maintainable code, all the things that we talked about before. What's also included in automated refactoring is our ability to take your data and allow that to be used via the Java and the .NET, number one, in its exact same form, but now we're simply doing it in SQL and Oracle. How we do that for propeller heads, you'll love the story. It's a interesting technical story that allows us to do that. But that's step number one. We simply allow it to be available. Step number two is now let's actually create some functionality inside of those databases to normalize it. Let's make it more customer centric, which are what we hear, especially in agencies, that they want their systems to go from individual flat files to something that's more customer centric. So allowing you to see the complete view of a client at one time on the screen and know exactly what's going on. So those just sort of typical things that we're asked to do. And of course, one of the last pieces of the system is going to be your batches and JCLs for anything that's not currently online. You want to be able to handle that. We do have tools that provide basically what's the same thing that we do for the Java.NET side. And this is just we're just reiterating. We have tooling for the migration, the modernization, the developers, and all the testing. We have some wonderful testing tools, just so you know, and I'll just throw this out there very quickly. We record the 3270 screens on your legacy systems for every function that is happening in your system. Once the system is migrated over, we're able to replay those back against the system that was refactored and know, is it working exactly the same way? We also take a snapshot of the data under those same circumstances on the legacy system. When we rerun it on the modern system, we're able to compare the data and make sure that there has been no loss in data. We're not saying that there's never any loss in data, okay? It happens, but we're able to recognize it. We fix it, we fix the tool. When it happens again, we know that it works. So it's a typical testing scenario, regression sort of testing. Our approach is iterative and non-disruptive. Hopefully I've been able to get that point across. And what we haven't talked about a lot is avoiding the big bang deployment where everybody comes in on Monday and they have to sit down and, oh, now I've got this new screen. I don't recognize anything. I don't even know if it's going to work. We're able to deploy in very small increments because of this tool that we have, another one of our tools in our tool chest called a data bridge, which allows the modern system and the legacy system to access the same legacy database initially so that you can simply deploy. So you could have 95% of your users still using the legacy system with the legacy data, and then deploy out to maybe just, how about a focus group of people that are going to use this application now on the modern system, right? But they're writing and reading and updating the same legacy data, so you don't have to worry about data synchronizing issues, which becomes a big issue in any parallel processing. Our system doesn't do that because of this extremely unique tool that we have. There's a lot more to that, but we don't need to get into that today.
And one of the biggest things is being able to run these things side by side and prove throughout each incremental deployment process that everything does work, right?
Absolutely, and we do that through the incremental deployment. You don't have to have two screens open for every person during the parallel processing. We can simply deploy out to a few people, let them do the same processes as the rest of your agency is doing, and we know that all the data is going to be synchronized because it's inherent to the tooling. And then I think this is a really awesome part of what we do. You don't have to believe me, and you don't have to believe our references. We can actually come out and do a proof of concept on a large chunk of your system, a small part of your system. We can simply just give you estimates and tell you where we see the pitfalls. Because of our tooling, we can run these analysis reports across your entire system and identify, here's the third-party applications that are going to be issues to us. Here are the third-party interfaces in your batch jobs that are going to be issues, allowing you to see them and us to see them and start developing a game plan. What are we going to do to fix these? We see these in every single one of our projects, so it's going to happen. But what's great is that you're aware of it, we're aware of it, and you're aware of it before the project starts.
Exactly.
So that gives you wonderful ability to say, here's where the budget is for our project, and be absolutely assured that that's where we're going to come in. All of our projects are not only successful, we always come in on time and in budget. And good luck finding any other vendor that can say that with the references. Right?
And to your point, many reasons why you should take a look at this is because it meets all the desired outcomes and the initiatives that are coming down on your head. These are the things to make sure that your mission keeps going. You have integration with your existing source code. You have the ability to maintain that code as it is in place today and not changing everything at one time. And a big piece is when folks are retiring or leaving. Again, we're not graduating folks with COBOL experience from college anymore. This is not something that is going to be surviving. It's a dying technology, and the folks that are involved in it are getting older and older as we speak. No offense to those folks. They're great people, and they're people that we still need to be able to maintain these systems as we move forward, but moving these to the newer platform so that there is no impact on the end users. Big deal for a lot of the agencies, the 508 compliance, and most importantly, controlling your costs. And I will add that with the maintenance costs that are associated with your mainframe systems, actually seeing an ROI on this so that we're in a place where we're not just throwing that money down a hole, trying to do patchwork on a system that you just can't get away from. So that's why we're doing what we're doing. Plus, as Craig said, it's familiar tooling. It's things that you use every day. And we mentioned the fully automated code conversion, using the ability to be able to look at these things in parallel operation. And Craig, this is one of his favorite terms. I'm telling you, no big bang. How important is that? Because that's where most of the time you see the failures is that it's all or nothing, and then the all doesn't work the way that it's supposed to, right?
It's managing the big bang deployment, or the big bang training, or the big bang switch that's going to occur on something like that. That's where we find the failures. That's where companies, agencies will call us. We come in, and unfortunately, that money's down the drain, but we redo it from there. Avoiding that big bang is key. That is one of the biggest areas of lowering the risk of a modernization project.
And it's probably one of the biggest things to be able especially from even in contracting as well as on the program side, because the temptation is, hey, let's go get all these new great things and we'll make this improvement while we're doing it. And that creates such an incredible problem for everyone in the process. And everybody knows what it's like for change management in your organization, looking at how to make those changes so that people can continue to do what they need to do. And you've seen it. We've all seen issues where we've made changes in the organization in other ways, whether it's just process changes where they take time to be able to be taken and working. So the quick wins can show you very quickly and make you look good, by the way, throughout the process. And most importantly, can be tested via pilot so that you can figure out if you can actually do this without dumping in millions of dollars to find out that whether it'll work or not. We can tell you whether it'll work with a pilot, which is very inexpensive, and getting there. So we'll get to some questions and get some answers here. So let me look here. You can go ahead and open the panel down to the right. You can ask us questions, or you can ask to be. You can raise your hand in your in where you signed in. You can raise your hand, and we can engage with you that way. We'd love to have the dialogue. There's some folks here that don't have the ability to talk back to us. I know because of the way that they called in, and I can't unmute them. So here's a question. Can the legacy and migrated system run in parallel, and how? So how does that work, Craig?
So if you think about it, one of the hardest things to imagine with a COT system is that the new and the old system have to work in parallel, because you immediately start facing those issues of data synchronicity. We've devised a method through one of our tools called the data bridge that allows us to share that legacy data with the new application, and that gives us the possibility to operate the old and the new system in parallel. And that, if you think about it, that sort of opens up a whole new avenue of options for risk reduction deployment into production. So with our tooling, you can keep this completely transparent from production. And it's a very unique thing that only Innoake has.
And that kind of goes to this question: how can we tell that it will work with our system? I guess fundamentally, it has to start with natural COBOL database kind of a formulation, right?
So yeah, well, first of all, we can't guarantee that we're going to cover everything in a legacy system, and that's why we have this meat grinder that will take your system, run it through our analysis tools, and we're going to identify those areas that we don't have coverage for. But again, it needs to be on a mainframe, obviously. Natural and COBOL are probably the two most prevalent development tools in that environment. We also, again, we certainly deal with assembler. I think in every project we've ever dealt with, there's been assembler, so we can handle that. But we need to be able to identify those areas that we can't cover currently, devise a plan within the tooling or other interfaces, for example, to provide that coverage. And we want to make sure that by the time we're ready to roll out, that we have it, 100% coverage on automated refactoring, and 95 to, let's say, 99% coverage or 100% coverage on those on interfaces that maybe you don't have to bring them across. For example, interfaces like FTPs, you don't have to bring those across. We have equivalents that are already over there, but we are identifying them beforehand, before the project starts, before you write an RFI or an RFP. With our analysis tools, we would come in, provide that, and say, here are the areas of concern, but we can still do this, or you know what, this is way out of the realm for what it is that we do, and we'll give you a recommendation as to maybe one of the other options that are out there that probably does not involve any Innoake tooling. So again, we can do that up front with our analysis tools.
Awesome. Will this presentation be made available? Yes, it will be made available. It's also being recorded so that it can be played back at a later time. And here's one: what does a proof of concept entail?
So, so we have different sort of stages of proof of concept. We can do everything from just looking at the system and estimating how complicated it is, which is something we're going to do even for the other levels. So that's kind of already in there. But we can also then take a small part of your system and do the data conversion, do the application conversion, set it up on a computer so you can see the old application running and exactly how it's going to look on the new application. So there's no question whether it works or it doesn't work. Even with some of the pitfalls that are going to occur during that process. Or we can take an even larger part of your system and go through the entire modernization part of that. It's still not your complete system, but a larger portion of it, and run it through the modernization. What's awesome about that is what Dave said, is that it's very inexpensive, especially when you're looking at the entire project. It's very inexpensive to go through a proof of concept with us to determine, is this a viable option for us? So the analysis is part of it. We can actually run through and do the migration and modernization for a small piece or a larger piece. And you have full confidence, and your management and your directors would have full confidence one way or the other whether it's going to work or not.
Now, this is a long question, Craig, so bear with me for just a minute. How do you, during a migration, account for security documentation deliverables, i.e. Executive Order M1403, enhancing the security of federal information and information systems, or Executive Order M1404, fiscal year 2013 reporting instructions for the Federal Information Security Management Act and agency privacy management? I'm going to preface that, at least at the end of that, to say most of that, it revolves around what you said already, which is it can be operated parallel. So you don't have to abandon one to go to the other. It can be operated in parallel, right?
Well, yeah, that's absolutely right. The other thing you have to understand is that you're not running Innoake software once you're over on the migrated side. right? You're running your exact system, whether it was in compliant or out of compliance, from the legacy system to the modern system. So that's not something that we have to be concerned with at that point. It's going through the modernization side of things, which is where we have to make sure we either get you into compliance or maintain the compliance that you currently have. So, for example, we're not changing any artifacts on the source system. Our refactoring process simply takes all the existing artifacts and migrates them to the target computer. So all the data, code, batches, interfaces, all the propeller head stuff still remains on site at the agency. Nothing's coming off. We're just sending you to a new platform. If part of that modernization is to go to the cloud, because obviously now you're running .NET or Java, well, that's something that we work with you on to maintain, making sure that we're on a proper host, and data security is adhering to the regulations that are already out there. So I'm going to just keep that a simple answer there. As we all know, there's a lot more that goes into that, but maintaining the compliancy on the target computer is not something that we've come across that has become an issue.
Awesome. We got a bunch of more questions. I'm going to include that as a follow-up that can go out to everybody, because we're running up against time. But I appreciate you guys and the questions that you have. Keep them coming, and we'll make sure that we get that out for everybody to see. So avoiding the gotchas, making sure you get yourself out, stay out of hot water. Start thinking early, making sure that you're paying attention to this before you get to a place where that mainframe, the mainframe licensing contracts and maintenance are coming up. Because a lot of times we stroke the check for that, and then it disappears for about 4 years, and then it's too late to kind of get things ramped up for the next thing. So start thinking early, avoid the big bang, as Craig said, to make sure we stay away from those, and using a proof of concept to validate that your approach is going to work. And that's one of the things that we can do here. The next thing is verifying the capabilities of the companies that you would have doing these things. Obviously, there's different folks that have different ways of going about it, but verifying that it can be done. And when you're looking at refactoring, look at refactoring 100% of it, as opposed to pieces of those to make those work. And another important piece, watching out for the brain drain, which is when folks from your organization have essentially the keys to the kingdom, and you just use the get hit by the bus rule. What happens when that happens, or they retire or leave to go to another agency or something like that? So watching out for those things, and making sure that we start to protect ourselves from that agency. So as far as funding and procuring this meets the requirements to access the CIO funding initiatives that have been released in the past. And you can contact Tony Scott's office to make sure that you can access some of these funds. And the proof of concept can be done with a simplified acquisition. It's usually less than $150,000. And if we need to, we can run it through a Deloitte IDIQ. We have service disabled partners if you need that. And we also have 8A partners. So or GSA schedule you can buy off of right now. So the idea is, whatever way you do your procurement and purchases, however you need to manage that, we can fit the proof of concept within that model and make sure that works for you and get those things done. So a real quick poll while we're doing, right before we finish up here. So when do you expect to have a legacy modernization in your world? So you have it immediately. We're already in 2016. If you're looking at especially the contracts that you've executed for your mainframe maintenance, or your database software AG spend, that's the kind of thing that you would know, kind of give you an indicator of when a modernization project would work well for you. So let us know about that, and we'll make sure that we incorporate that in our information that we send to you based on what it is that you need. And I'll leave that open for a couple more seconds. You have it immediately, 2016, 17, 18, and 19. A lot of things are happening over the course of the next couple of years, especially. So make sure we'll do that. I'm going to give you 5 more seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and we'll close that down. We appreciate that. So with a follow-up, we'll give you links to the initiatives and the memoranda. You'll find those, and some of those are in the handouts that are there. We'll get a presentation out to you, including the PowerPoint, as well as a link to the video, all of the questions and answers that we've been doing so far today with the Q&A session, as well as ones that we will field as we go on. And we will be reaching out to schedule meetings to discuss what you have on your plate and some of the capabilities that we can bring, including the proof of concept, and responding to additional information. And one of the questions that we have is, do you have a sample scope of work? And the answer, yes, we do. We'll make sure that we understand what it is that you have, and we'll craft one for you for that purpose. With that, we're going to say thanks for joining us. Craig, you want any parting comments for the folks before we let them go?
Nope, I think we're good, Dave. Thank
Awesome.
you, everybody, for coming, and we hope to hear from you.
Yeah,
we'd love to tell you a little bit more about what we do.
Absolutely. Love to continue the conversation. And in the meantime, if we don't catch you before the holidays, have a happy holiday, Merry Christmas if that's your thing, and Happy Hanukkah if that's your thing. And we'll make sure that we catch up and stay in contact. We appreciate your participation and joining us today. Have a great one and enjoy the rest of this fine December.